Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Grand Rounds today. Our speaker for this morning is our own Dr. Michael Mueller, who is a trained peds cardiac anesthesiologist with us. Mike's got some interesting stuff, which I wrote down here, with some help from him. He graduated from Midwestern in Arizona, went to Yale for his anesthesia residency, then Seattle Children's for the peds anesthesia, and then ended up graduating in peds cardiac anesthesiology. He also worked for Doctors Without Borders in Sudan and Nigeria, and then worked for a while in New Zealand. In between all of that, he was able to climb 3 of the 7 highest mountains. Please be to very interesting experiences he'll take us through. Dr. Mike Mueller, please.
Thank you. There once was a group of villagers on a riverbank who were just settling down for an evening when one of them sees a baby in the water and immediately dives in, braving the fierce current, and he rescues the infant. And he climbs ashore, and one of the other people spots another baby in the river in need of help, and then another, and then another. And overwhelmed by the sheer number of babies, the people start grabbing anybody they can to start and help them. And before long, the river is filled with desperate babies. More and more rescuers are required to assist the people. Unfortunately, not all of these babies could be saved. And tragically, some of these rescuers drown. But the village is able to mold themselves into a very efficient baby-saving organization. And over time, there was an entire infrastructure. It became the baby-saving village. And they had hospitals and schools and foster cares and social services, and they had trauma and victim support services to support their baby-saving endeavors. But at this point, one of the rescuers starts to walk upstream. And everyone said, "Where are you going?" Disconcertedly, "We need you here. Look how busy we are." And the rescuer replies, "You guys carry on here. I'm going upstream to figure out why all these babies are falling in the river." So this is a great little story to try to explain problem solving. To do it right, you have to attack it in 2 waves. One is you've got the response. That's the first. And but that's, that's the rescuing of the babies, but that's not sustainable. That's where the second wave comes in. All right? And that's when someone needs to go upstream and say, not only stop them, but they say, why? Why are these babies being thrown in the river? So what does it have to do with today's topic? Funny you should ask. It's an analogy that I'm trying to show that we have a problem in healthcare, and we need to walk upstream to get ahead of this problem, okay? And this is the problem. So in our country, physician suicide is the highest among any profession. It's twice that of the general population, and that translates into a loss of 1 doctor every day. 1 doctor every day. So, I've been sort of on a mission, I guess, to find the perfect system. I've had all these different jobs. I've been all around the world, and this was me in medical school. And I guess it's just, this is the most essential thing. Like at the end of the day, it's you and the patient. There are over 3,000 articles that can be found with the keyword burnout. So I tried to get through as much as I could. There's a mountain of literature. I did over 100 interviews with different colleagues of different specialties, and I've had a lot of different jobs in many different countries, been to over 60 different countries, and when I was charged with this task of trying to learn about what's happening with this topic, I was completely overwhelmed. I even hired my own research team. I hired an assistant and spent my own money and it was a colossal failure. I mean, I don't even think we got through 100 articles. But I did learn one thing. We need to stop saying burnout. That's my message. That's what this talk is about. And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, geez, you could have saved us some time, maybe just send us an email, Okay, there's more than that. There's more than that. It's also about creating change, and it's about saving lives. Very quickly, let's talk about what is burnout and where did that come from? So Christina Maslach, Dr. Christina Maslach, back in the 70s, she created this burnout inventory, upon which all of the studies have basically been based to assess for the symptoms. And I'll just go through it real quickly. Exhaustion, and that could be mental or physical, okay? The cynicism, now that's compassion fatigue and where people start to get numb. And then it moves into the really bad stuff, which is feeling like professional inefficacy. I mean, this is really bad. This is where it's like, I'm worthless, or there is no future, what I'm doing doesn't matter, okay? So this has been going on for a long time. This is 4 decades, and it is just getting worse. And people are really starting to pay attention after this Shanafelt article came out in 2015, which showed that half of physicians out there are experiencing distress. Half. And that's all specialties. So here we are. They did this in 3 phases, but this was the worst in 2014. But here we are. Here's the 50% mark. So if so look to your right. Look at the person to your right. And now look to the person to your left. So one of those people is experiencing distress. So one of the things I found is that physician engagement surveys that have been subsequent to this have been aggravating people. So people are very irritated. Here's a little bit more from the same article. Now this is where you want to be, right? This is great work-life balance. And here's psychiatry and pediatrics is right here. Preoccupation. Now these guys are not doing so good. So this is the burnout percentage, and then this is the y-axis is satisfaction with their life, urological cert. We're right here, okay? So more than half are experiencing distress. But what we want to be here. What does that? But we kind of some people forgot what that looks like. What this looks like is that when you wake up in the morning, you're so excited to come to work that you're jumping out of bed. All right, you don't have to raise your hand, but if you think about this, are you so excited you're jumping out of bed? Are you so in love with your job that the thought of retirement terrifies you? Okay, that's where we want to be. We want to be in that upper corner. All right. So I gave this talk at another hospital last month, and I wrote it for the residents. I was asked to do this, and I wrote it for the residents of this hospital. And when I gave the talk, no residents showed up. So this shows you the empty seats. There wasn't one resident. And the attendings got up and they thanked me. They're like, this is a very nice talk. But what are we supposed to do? Our residents are so tired, they're skipping your talk to eat breakfast. And I'm thankful that this institution is a little bit different. And thank you for coming. But it clued me into a couple things. This topic is, people do not like to engage in this topic. People are very upset about this, okay? Now, so when it comes to my anxiety, so the things that terrified me, I think at the top of the list is crocodiles. Like, that's what I'm most afraid of. And then public speaking is kind of like, middle of the road. Public speaking is okay. And then, maybe like then sharks. And then actually speaking about this topic, this is what I'm working with right now, all right? But I'm gonna give it my best shot, so thank you. I got completely overwhelmed with this topic, as I mentioned, and so I called my friend, Dr. Pranay Sinha, who's a friend from Yale, and I said, Pranay, this is awful, man. Everyone's upset. I don't know how to get through the literature. I don't have an answer for anybody. I'm burned out. I'm literally burned out. It's so awful. And I called him because he wrote this article for the New York Times. And he had a similar story. When he wrote his article about why do doctors commit suicide, he said he became the burnout guy and everyone was coming to him. And he said it was the same thing with me, and I couldn't take it anymore. I said, enough of this. And he wrote his own book, and which is something that any one of us can do. But he wrote his book, and he told me, he's like, I have some advice for you. Think about the language. Think about what you're saying. And so he pointed me to this article, this very important article that was published last summer. And the title is Physicians Aren't Burning Out, They're Suffering from Moral Injury by Simon Talbot and Wendy Dean. Simon Talbot is a New Zealand-born plastic surgeon working at Mass General, and Wendy Dean is formerly a psychiatrist, now working to advance military medicine. So I actually contacted her. I reached out on social media, and I put out a tweet, and I just said, I just need help with my talk. And she was one of the people that responded to me, and I've actually been able to talk to her. We've been talking on the phone like every week. And what she told me was, she's like, this is a symptom of our broken healthcare system, okay? She said, what we need to do is we need to change the language. We think it's moral injury. Now, what does that mean? We've never heard these words together. This is very like abstract and it's kind of weird, right? Like people like burnout because it's very punchy, and whether it correctly or incorrectly identifies the problem, people kind of know what you're talking about, right? Whereas moral injury is more abstract. If you look up the definitions of moral, it's basically the principles of right and wrong, all right? A societal construct of right and wrong, and then injury is either an offense or being injured. So what she, and so where this came from is Dr. Dean's work in the military. And it originally came from seeing all of the soldiers. They've been applying this term to soldiers for some time because people are they don't accept the term PTSD. When soldiers go to war, they witness or they're part of something that is against their sense of right and wrong. And they come back and they're wounded. They're terribly wounded. And so they call that moral injury. Now, Dr. Dean, I asked her, like, what, so just tell me in your own words, what is it? What is going on in healthcare in America?
So I think where it really comes from is this sense that physicians are trying to serve too many masters. So we're caught in a double, triple, quadruple bind of trying to satisfy the requirements and the needs of our patients, who should come first, but also the insurer and their needs, our health insurance system and its needs and constraints and requirements, and also our own self-interest, because at this point, oftentimes a physician has a quota that they have to meet, or they have other constraints that drive their bottom line. And so trying to satisfy, you can't just satisfy one of those. You can't just attend to the patient and do a good job.
So that sums it up. I mean, it's primarily we have a duty to our patient, but we also have a duty to take care of ourselves, and everything is in conflict with one another. Now, she goes on to describe why she thinks the language needs to be changed. And listen to the part where they talk about how their article was rejected. Their article was rejected over and over again until they just tweaked the language, which clued people in that it was something different.
So if you don't have the language, and if you don't have the language to put on what's happening to you in that context of moral injury, it's impossible to understand what's happening and then to be able to change it.
We found this as we were writing this essay through several of our drafts that as we showed our drafts to people, they kept saying, well, we don't really understand, you're reiterating the idea of burnout. And it wasn't until we changed the language and started using the term moral injury that people started to understand that we weren't just talking about a lack of resilience of one physician.
So language matters. When they changed the language, people started to understand that it was something deeper. Okay, it was physician burnout was a symptom of something bigger. So the language that we use really matters. I'm an advocate for this term. Now, whether or not this is the term that we use forever, it may not be. But I think it's what we at least have to do is acknowledge that what we say matters. And burnout really is about. It's about shaming the individual, okay? What moral injury is saying is that we have a society, and it's everybody. Okay, it's all of us. Burnout says it's you. It isolates people. Okay, and that's one of the problems we have as physicians, is that we feel isolated. If we feel isolated, we don't know how to ask for help. Language matters. This is personal communication over email. She's telling me there's just no easy solution to this whole thing. But if you keep saying burnout, it readily anchors the problem to just one place, the physician. And I say physician, and everybody's included, okay? I know that the talk is called physician, but I want to make sure that everybody knows it's not just physicians, okay? It's everybody, all right? Even the people that are not taking care of patients. So Dr. Dean has gives some tips, and they have a website, moralinjury.healthcare. She's offered to come and speak to our organization. She has some interesting advice. She said, maybe have your CEO come and shadow you for a day. I had never thought about that. Have your physician leader or your boss just come and spend a little time with you on rounds, see what that's like, and start to bring your colleagues into this conversation. So I want to introduce a few people that are actually speaking up on this issue, because I think it's important. So some of you may know about this guy, Dr. Z-Dog. He's an emergency physician. He does a lot of interesting videos. I like his passion. He kind of is trying to hit at the issue, but there's something in this video that is sort of getting at the issue, but he's also missing the point.
Tired of people calling it burnout. What over 50% of healthcare professionals are experiencing, they call it burnout. It's exhaustion, low productivity, and a feeling of deep cynicism. And it's so prevalent that everyone, even in administration, is starting to panic. Like, what's going on? Why are physicians and nurses and PAs, why are they burning out? Well, burnout is a kind of victim shaming. It's saying you're not resourceful enough, you're not resilient enough, you're not strong enough to adapt to a system. So maybe you should meditate. Maybe you should use some lavender essential oil. Maybe we could have a wellness retreat or hire a chief wellness officer. Listen, it's all bull.
Okay, so what he's alluding to here is that people are really upset. People are extremely upset about basically a conflict. So if you're offered, let's say, Schwartz rounds, which you guys know what Schwartz rounds is, it's basically an opportunity for the people of the hospital to come together and speak and tell stories. If Schwartz rounds is offered only at 10 a.m. and you're stuck in the OR, that's a conflict, and that's what makes you upset. Okay, that's what makes us all upset. If you're told to meditate, but what you really need is to be able to take your kid to the doctor, then you're going to be really pissed off when people say, so these tools are important. Yes, by all means, meditate, use the lavender, do the workshops. You need that. But we also need the other thing, too. All right, so this is Dr. Christina Maslach.
Say it's more like the canary in the coal mine. And if you understand that the canary in the cage goes down in the coal mine, and if the canary is having trouble breathing and functioning, it's a sign to you that the workplace, the mine, is dangerous. Too many toxic fumes, you better not send people down there.
Okay, so that's an old metaphor, but what I think what she had tried to say is that the response is, let's work on the environment. And I think some people have because of the word, some people have sort of misdirected the attention on the individual. All right, because there's no, if you go through nursing school or medical school, there is no more resilient people. I'm speaking to the most resilient, most intelligent people on the entire planet. All right, some of you, this room, that's what that represents.
It's a warning sign of a toxic work environment, and what you should be doing is saying, what is going on to cause such problems among people who work here? What you don't want to do is try and make the bird better and tough and resilient, and it can take, if you can't stand the toxic fumes and the heat in the kitchen, you shouldn't work here, kind of thing.
Yeah. So she's absolutely right. So what she's saying is we need both approaches. Okay. So This is a very hotly debated concept. Is it the nature? Is it the nurture? Is it the individual? Is it the system? Okay. Now, there's a lot of help out there. There's a lot of workshops. There's a lot of things, and I urge you to explore all this stuff. If you pay attention, they tell you that these are tools, and these are tools to help you. Okay, but they can't solve everything. So in this IHI improvement that they offer workshops on resilience and being leaders, and this is a promotional pitch at the very end of the video. She actually tells you that they're not there to solve a few of the issues.
These 4 steps do not ignore the larger organizational issues that exist. Things like the impact of the EHR functionality on clinicians' daily work, or workload and staffing issues.
Did everybody catch that? For some people, it's all about the workload and staffing issues. Okay, so they're acknowledging that they can help you and they give you tools, but it's like they won't get to some of these issues. What are we seeing going on right now in America? It's a lot different than it was 30 years ago. People are moving to part-time jobs rather than full career. There's just less commitment out there for the employees. There's very destructive competition between coworkers. Whether intentional or not, some organizations have divisive tactics that reward talent, but not for everyone. People are shut out of opportunities, and there is an overall loss of the common good. What this essentially does, according to Wendy Dean, is that it disempowers our workforce. Okay, so if people are frustrated and sort of at each other's throats, it's completely disempowering. I'd like to introduce Dr. Pamela Weibel. So I don't know if anyone has heard of her, but she has been speaking on this issue for many years now. She has a little bit of a different vibe. Some people do not like the way she speaks, and because she's really aggressive about this stuff. I think we need people like her, but she's saying it's flat out abuse. Okay, it's human rights violations. Now, not everyone agrees with that. Not everyone agrees, because some people will say if it's human rights violation, it can't be voluntary. It can't be voluntary. So again, we're losing one doctor a day. She's saying this has been going on for 158 years. There's a lot of different words to describe what's happening. She also says don't say burnout. Don't keep anchoring it on this issue. She's saying human rights violation. We've got another option. We've got moral injury. You could say physician distress. You know, your words matter. But in her response to basically people saying like it's not abuse, take a listen to this video. This is a resident who is a foreign medical grad, and she talks about her experience on a J1 visa in a residency.
And then if you start questioning, what options do you have as a foreign medical graduate? If you don't like it, go back, okay? You don't like it, you came here by your own volition. You don't like it, go back. Who's stopping you? No, we're not stopping you. We have tons of other medical residents lined up, other foreign graduates lined up, to take your spot.
And that's absolutely true. And it's true at a lot of the different levels. There's a lot of other people that are lined up to take someone's spot. So imagine physician leaders, basically everyone in the entire chain, and if you don't toe that line, someone else will take your spot. So that is a very tough part of our system, okay? A lot of people are saying, let's look at what's being done in our educational system. Okay, where is this starting? So there's a lot of articles that show really good data. So if we compare a brand new medical student right at the time of matriculation to their cohort that went into other fields, right? So other college graduates that went into something else, the matriculating medical students had better mental health. They had the lowest burnout. They had less depression. They had higher quality of life. And that pattern was completely reversed by the second year of medical school. The pattern was completely reversed. And burnout was highest in residency. And I can say personally that I have felt this. So here's me in my first year of medical school. I think I look okay, right? I look like, I know what I'm doing. But watch what happens as I move into my second year. Things start to really fall apart, right? And as I get into my residency, whoa, that's trouble. All right, look, all kidding aside, this is a serious issue. I like this. This is somebody had put this on Twitter. This is Dr. Chopra, and he put this on Twitter. This is how I identified that study. So social media is very valuable for passing information. But I like the way he summed it up. We select the most resilient students, and then we break them. I thought that was, nobody intends to do this, by the way, but I like the way he put that. The patients are seeing this too. When if you're at conflict, and I don't know if it may not be as much with us, but the patients do sense some of this conflict. They sense that if they're getting denied on their insurance, or the insurance is telling the doctor you can't do this procedure because we're not going to pay for it, patients are getting a sense that there's all this conflict, and they're starting to not trust doctors. Okay. We're seeing that more and more. Patients are not really, they are, but it's changing. It's like they're not trusting as much. So let's look at what Christina Maslach's work. She's got decades of good data, and she's looking at what she has found is that she tries to rather than fit a person to a job, she thinks it's good to try to fit the job to the person, and she looks at 6 different areas, the workload, the control, a reward system, community, fairness, and values, okay? And then she, and then based on these attributes, she was able to set up, organize their studies in this manner. Let me just explain here. So we've got blue is workload, okay, and this represents a person. These little clusters, these are people. And so these people, and then it's a scoring system, right? So this person is really happy. They've got all of these things that's what you want to see. That's where, this means engaged. This is engagement. This is considered burnout. This person's not doing too bad. They're sort of closer. This is really interesting, because what's happening here is that this is workload. So they're working very, very hard. But the rest of the pattern, sort of small. So Dr. Maslach says that if it's just workload, it's not burnout. I'm going to say that again. If it's just an extreme workload, but everything else is sort of okay, meaning that if you love your job and you're just really working like crazy, it's not burnout. And then these people are obviously like, everything is bad. Look at this. This is showing a very, very, look at the difference. This is workload here, this little tiny speck, and then everything is bad. On the converse, what she's saying is that if it's a bad environment and everything is bad, it doesn't really matter how much they work. They could work very little and they could still be in significant distress, okay? And I experienced that firsthand with Doctors Without Borders. So I worked in Sudan, and I was on call 24/7, 7 days a week, for months on call, doing C-sections in the middle of the night, all kinds of stuff. And I just worked till I basically collapsed in the OR. I basically just sat down, and I was hypotensive. And everybody kind of had like a GI illness, but I just worked. And this is a picture right after they put my IV in. Does that look like someone who hates the job? I was very happy because I didn't have malaria, but what this represents basically a deep connection to purpose and a love of my team and community, okay? And that's what that was like. These smiling faces represent choices, represents community and control, autonomy. So let's talk a little bit more about some of these strategic areas. Let's talk about reward, okay? So everybody thinks reward is all about the money, right? Well, it's not. It turns out social rewards like recognition and praise are really important. And I don't think that sometimes maybe we're not looking enough at that. There's also the sense of community, all right? A sense of community. Is your community the type where everybody is completely in line and you're having dinners together, or is there competition and stuff like that? When I went to New Zealand, the very first day I got to New Zealand, the OR staff got together and played a welcome song. So, I've never had anyone sing to me, and but that was like, so on day one, that was it, and I felt like I had found the most perfect system. I didn't really understand all the things that made it so great. A lot of times I think about, was it the work schedule that was so good? Was it, there were a lot of things. Let's talk about fairness. When we talk about fairness in the workplace, we need to immediately go to basically gender inequity and minorities, okay? So this is a study that was done by Julie Silver and her colleagues and published in PM&R. And what this is showing is that so the red bars are male and the blue is female, okay? And this just means since 1968 to the 2015 at the end of the study, these are just awards. And so there was very few awards to the women, right? There's many studies that show inequities for gender. Here's another one, but this time it's language. Language matters. So when women introduce any gender, they use the professional title like doctor. When men introduce women, and I'm not trying to call anybody out here, it's just something that I see every day. Men introduce women, and they're basically like half the time they're actually saying the word doctor. It's really interesting. Just pay attention to that. I don't think so the point is that our language matters as it comes to fairness. Okay. Same thing with like performance evaluations. On the left column is the men, and the right column is the women. Far more negative and more descriptors of the evaluation. This is interesting. This is also by Dr. Julie Silver. So a lot of these great studies are being published, and what we found from the people that are actually identifying the problem and doing the publishing, what they're saying is, they're saying just because we've identified the problem, we're publishing, but it's not really. You can't say that it's our job to fix this. Okay, so if you ask yourself who is responsible for fixing a problem before saying to a woman, you should do this. Too often people identify a problem and then they're told by the people that you should fix it. I believe the same goes for physician distress, okay? This is a social media tweet. This is Maurice Scholas. I am an MD, PhD from Harvard with senior leadership position at a major organization, yet I've been stopped by police every time I've gone into the suburbs around Minneapolis. Not sometimes, every single time. All right? One doctor every day. This is a difficult topic. After my talk, I felt a little frustrated. I felt like the talk went okay, but what I try to do is I continue to try to engage with people and speak more about hey, what's important to you, and let's talk about burnout. And people are just very angry, and they sometimes just didn't want to talk about it. I mean, it's very frustrating. And I went back to Dr. Dean, and she said, you have got to stop saying that word. If you keep leading the conversation by saying that word, burnout, you're already going to get people upset, right? Because it's been 40 years. What have we done? It's getting worse. Okay. So she kept, and I knew this, but I'm just like, well, how am I supposed to talk about it? How am I supposed to talk about it? And she said, just say something else. Just say distress. Say what it is, whatever's bothering you, but stop saying it. No problem is going to be solved at the same level of consciousness that created it. Okay, nobody's going to fix burnout if they keep saying burnout. All right, we have to start thinking about it in a different way. One of the ways that we can do this is by starting to change our system. Okay. But changing the system is not easy. People do not like change, all right? And does anybody know how I did this? No. But look, changing the system is is not easy. This is a book that Dr. Christina Maslach had mentioned called Dying for a Paycheck by Jeffrey Pfeffer. Modern management commonalities such as long hours, work-family conflict, and economic insecurity are toxic to employees, hurting engagement, increasing turnover, destroying people's physical and emotional health, while also being inimical to the company performance. He argues for human sustainability. There's probably not a lot of metrics yet. Sometimes we just don't have the metrics for sustainable. So physicians and healthcare workers are leaving medicine like crazy, all right? And there's a cost to that. Dr. Maslach has argued for support of our older physicians, the ones that they've been around for decades, and and they see the change. And if an organization says, hey, listen, if you're not going, if we don't like what you're doing, or if you're not going to do these shifts or whatever, we've got 10 brand new graduates that are ready to take your spot. So they're arguing for recognition and trying to understand that there's a value for the people that have been in medicine for a long time. Okay, there's a cost to losing these people, and that cost is not totally known yet. So Dr. Wendy Dean says, ask yourself what you really need. Okay, a lot of people say that they just want time with their family. Some people say less hours. Some people say more control. Some people just say they want to be valued. A lot of people that are outside of our specialty say they absolutely hate insurance and how it is getting in the way of everything. And then of course compensation goes into it. The goals are different for different people, okay? For some people, they may need to adjust the workload. Some people just want control, they want choices. Some people just want to be noticed. But everybody wants community. Everybody wants trust, and community means being united, all right? People want fairness and policies administered fairly. So getting rid of glass ceilings and making equal opportunity and recognizing conflicts and then listening to one another. This is what a good, strong community looks like. All right, so getting back to New Zealand, a strong community in my opinion. And I wanted to tell you guys, I worked at, I kid you not, Whakatane Hospital, what was it called? Because the WH is a F sound, so that's where I worked. And life was great. Life was great in New Zealand. There were some things that it took me a while to sort of figure out what it was that I liked about their system. They have something that when something goes wrong, and I actually had something that went wrong. I had a patient injury because of something I did, and it was devastating. What happens is that when you have when something goes wrong, it's not very adversarial at all. It's they have this system called the ACC, Accidental Compensation Corporation. What that is that's a third-party payer, and then they just pay. So if anybody's just injured, or if there's a patient is injured, regardless of the fault, the patient gets money. There's no fight at all. You just get paid, all right? And so it's a no-fault system. What this did for me was that it aligned me with the patient. So I continued to fight and on behalf of my patient. So I did the paperwork, and I was still working for her. It put us still on the same side, all right? And this is just and it doesn't mean that this is exactly what we need, but it's the idea, is aligning these issues rather than having everything in conflict. Because, look, it's one doctor every day, all right? This is not just Darwin thinning the field, all right? It's not just statistics. It's a doctor every day. And one day, it was my friend. And you don't have to raise your hand, but I'm going to ask you don't have to raise your hand, but how many of you do know someone who's committed suicide? So my friend Sally committed suicide. She was a cardiac anesthesiologist in New Zealand while I was working there, and she was my age, and we were good friends. I was training at Seattle Children's, and she was training in a cardiac fellowship at University of Washington, and we were friends together. We did all these ski trips, and we had this great community. And then I got the call one day that she killed herself in her parents' house. So I reached out to her family, and I kind of been speaking to her family. I talked to her family at the funeral, and it's funny that her mom just wrote to me 2 days ago, which I haven't heard from them in a while, but so she says, "Dear Mike, it has taken us too long to get back to you, and I apologize. I have been thinking a lot since reading your letter." I'm getting upset here, sorry. "I must say I admire you for taking on such a difficult subject. Having thought about Sally's decision over the last 7 years, and having read extensively, no one thought springs out as a major factor. As we look into it, it would appear that for each person the situation is entirely different. And I do believe that Sally's illness and her ability to practice at the high level she had worked so hard to achieve, had it become known that she was ill, and the toxic work environment did play a part in her decision. After Sally passed away, we were approached by the Auckland media to say something about her work environment at the hospital, but we did not pursue it, as we did not think that Sally wanted to be defined by this. And it is interesting to think about, though, that if one has a physical ailment, there is a different attitude to receiving treatment of the illness. It's interesting, even after Sally died, they still didn't really want to speak up. And I think that this kind of gets at the core of physician suicide. If we're isolated, we feel alone, we don't know how to ask for help. But it's okay. You're all normal, and you're having normal reactions to an abnormal environment, and it's basically everybody in the whole country. It's all of us, okay? It's okay to ask for help. All right? You should ask for help. Everyone is being affected. And some people we need some people to actually stand up. Some people need to stand up and say, "Hey, I'm not afraid to say that we have a problem, it's the system." But what you need to know is this will never be you. As long as we agree as a community that we all matter. All right? As long as we agree to the community that we will support each other. And then you went to go from here to here, which is me breakdancing in Tiananmen Square, where back people were protesting and being killed, and now I can breakdance in Tiananmen Square. Like that's where we're moving towards, right? So let's get back to Dr. Z-Dog, okay? I want to address this. I sent this video out, and I've had a chance to think it through, and I feel like he missed something big. He really missed something here. I want to see if you guys know what he missed and what he did wrong here.
So what's going to happen? What's going to happen to a good person in a bad system when they feel they can't change the system, but they have to adapt? They're going to adapt, they're going to adapt, they're going to adapt, and then they're going to break. And that's what they call burnout. It's not burnout. The next administrator who tells you they're trying to manage burnout, tell them to go themselves. Tell them it's moral injury. And until we know what it is, we're never going to be able to treat it.
As passionate as Dr. Z-Dog is, and I admire his passion and I admire him speaking up, how would you feel if someone comes up to you and says, go F yourself? So this is why saying moral injury is important. It resonates with everyone. So if you tell your administrator or people that are in your organization who are not in the front line, if you go this route, that causes injury to them, right? And that's not what this is about. This is about bringing everybody to the table, okay? Because it affects it's us. It's all of us. So your words matter, all right? Again, I advocate for saying moral injury or physician distress. I mean, it's impossible. I was going to try to not say the B word in this talk, but as you can see, I've been failing. It's impossible to really not say it, but at least you're aware now. And now that you are aware, let's talk about how we're going to accelerate the change, okay? Because this is not meant to be depressing. This is I have optimism for the future. Why? So these are the steps for change. Why? We know that it hasn't been working. What's being done has not been working. It's time to identify what Malcolm Gladwell calls the tipping point. Tipping point's really interesting. It's like you don't have to solve the whole problem, because the problem is just too big. It's bigger than everybody. It's a system. But when you start to identify the sticky points, that's what he calls it. These are like the little issue. This is kind of like moral injury. When just like this little thing, they wrote this article and all of a sudden it's like, hey, people are talking about it. The whole thing can just go and then move, okay? Leverage your network. Now, your network is more than just the people within the walls of this hospital. So when used correctly, social media is a way to feel part of the community. Okay? It's a way to not feel alone. Ultimately, what we're moving towards is policy change. But we need the right language. If we need the right language to start to send it up to the leaders of the hospital, the leaders in medicine, send it up to the shareholders, send it up to the policymakers, okay? Policymakers are going to pay attention. If you don't think I'm right about this is going to change. $4.6 billion in losses because of burnout. We are very quickly coming up to a very bad physician shortage. Okay, it's coming. So America, this will change. I promise you, this will get better. I want to talk about some empowerment, right? So if we are a disempowered workforce, let's talk very quickly about how do we empower each other. All right. If you think you're too small to be effective, you've never been in bed with a mosquito. And I learned that in Sudan. It was awful. So getting on social media, right? So social media, so there's a lot of issues with social media, it can be a distractor, but it also, when used correctly, can propagate good knowledge and create real change, okay? This is how we're going to make changes. You get involved with the conversation. And you identify your colleagues that you resonate with, and you start simple. You find what they're saying, and then you can actually do things like you can share their message. Sharing their message, what that's doing is that it increases their value and increases your value. It's amazing how this thing works. When you start to increase someone else's value, you increase your own intrinsic value, okay? If you are publishing studies, whatever your study is, a social media strategy to accelerate the sharing of your study is, it's amazing what people are doing. So Julie Silver, and in case I don't know if you noticed, but she's been a great mentor for me, copied her slides and everything. What she is showing here is that they had the original study, and then they made another study about how much more their study had increased its impact by just sharing on social media. Okay, so there's all kinds of tips that you can do. You can learn about it, but it's really about just getting involved, being part of your community, being part of the conversation. Okay, I really like thought leader conferences. So I recommend the Harvard conferences, Writing, Publishing, Social Media. This is one of the best, probably the best conference I've ever been to in my life. So it's coming up, and it's in June, and there might still be availability, but if not, there's another one next year. I also think that this one, taught by the same people, the Career Advancement for Leadership. So go to conferences, okay? Seek out more mentors. You can't really have too many mentors. Learn about money. The scope of this talk is I don't have enough time to talk about this, but when you learn about money and there's people talking about money, you can actually free yourself, and physicians have a real money problem with all the debt we have, and especially with a high cost living city like Los Angeles. So getting back to our story, we need to come at this in two ways. So by all means, whatever anybody offers you, when you're offered the wellness retreat and the resilience training, yes, you do that, all right? You take advantage. Those are tools that are going to help you sort of work through all this stuff, all right? But at the same time, we are also going to be trying to identify the root cause, okay? And part of getting at the root cause is starting to change our language, okay? And it's not going to be easy. You're going to get some resistance from this. All right, it's not going to be easy to stop saying the B word. I can't even do it. But your goal is to really build this community. All right, build up your community and figure out what language you want to use so that when it comes time, you can start informing to create new policy. Thank you very much.
So just a quick comment, Mike, thank you. It's a tough topic, and you presented in a spirit that is engaging and almost optimistic. You know, it's getting to the root causes. We're not going to change the healthcare system alone, but if there are elements of a culture that could be addressed here at this hospital, in our department, or in one particular operating room, we should start that dialogue. So, if we haven't already. So, I applaud you for doing this. Not ironically enough, at our retreat that's coming up, we are going to have discussions about this and having some talks and having some tools to address this, and hopefully it'll be complementary to what Mike has presented. So, thank you.
I hate to change the topic.
Get back to work.
There is actually.
Get back to work, everybody.
I should have done this first, and then you could have used me as an example. Right? This is very easy though. Dr. Ubrot and the plastic surgeons have made a request to us as anesthesia providers on how to properly tape an oral ray tube so that it does not distort the lip and the mouth when they're working that area. So in room 5 and in room 10, you will see a photo of the way that we should tape